Anyhow, maybe we can get to that later. This is the second panel. The previous panel focused on policy issues, on government issues, on federal government issues, on what do Mexico City and Washington need to do. What we're going to do now is we've got three panelists. Their bios are, please read them. They're in here. I don't want to delay us. But what we're going to do now is we've got three gentlemen who are actually working on the ground. Companies that have production facilities in Tijuana who are exporting not just to the United States, but exporting to the world from those production facilities. I have to tell you that yesterday we went to Tijuana. Ambassador Negroponte mentioned this earlier, but we had an extraordinary day where we went to DJO Global and saw, and that's what we're going to want to talk about now, saw the benefits of having that feedback loop between the people doing R&D and the people doing the production. And so you could actually see how your production workers are teaching the R&D people how to do their jobs better, how to make your processes more efficient, more competitive, easier to build, and better products. I mean, so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about near sourcing. And Ambassador Lay talked about now's the time to grab that, to set it up. And so I'm gonna stop talking, and I'm gonna turn the panel. I guess we will go from right to left. I don't think there's any particular, or we go from left to right if you prefer. But the three panelists are Chris Anderson, who is the CEO of 3D Robotics, a small company, would you call it? Medium company? Where do you?
SME. We were small yesterday.
You'll be big tomorrow. You'll be gigantic tomorrow. That's called entrepreneurial spirit. Dave Hester, who is the president of Kyocera Mexico, which is a Japanese company which has North American headquarters in San Diego, but your worldwide headquarters are in Kyoto, obviously. And Eduardo Salcedo, who is the vice president, and there's a second part of your title. Anyhow, he runs everything in DJO Global in Tijuana, which is a U.S. company based in Vista, with production facility in Tijuana.
Vice President of Operations.
Vice President of Operations. That sounds great. What I've asked them to do is talk for 7 to 10 minutes each, and so that we have time for questions from me and from you. And so, Chris, why don't we start with you? How's that?
Remind me just to give the overview of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I thank you for setting this up. This is a treat for me. I did not set out to be a Mexican-American or American-Mexican businessman. I'm here because market forces brought me here. Until I quit I was for 12 years the editor-in-chief of Wired magazine. I'm in the media industry in Silicon Valley. And in December, I quit my job to take over my startup company, which had called 3D Robotics, which had grown quite quickly. My co-founder of this company, who I met online when he was, 5 years ago, when he was 19 years old, a high school graduate from Tijuana, Jordi Munoz, had just been the smartest guy I'd met. And I kind of said, let's start a company. And he said, okay. And the next thing, I went down to visit him, met him for the first time, and there was like a factory in San Diego. And then I went down the next time, and there was a factory in Tijuana. And then there are like these robot machines making electronics, and we make drones, by the way. And today today we're about 60 people. We'll be 100 by July or so. We'll do about $10 million in revenues. And we have, I just signed a lease on a big factory area in Tijuana, and my team is almost all Mexican.
How many people are in San Diego and how many are in Tijuana?
We have about 25 in San Diego, and we'll have about the same amount in Tijuana, but we're growing fastest in Tijuana. Today we realize that fundamentally our job is to compete with China. Our competition in the aerospace, and we're kind of a bottoms up disruptor of the aerospace industry, and our competition is not the Lockheed Martins and the Boeings of the world. Our competition is Chinese companies, and what we see is we just closed a big venture capital round, and what the venture capitalists liked about us, or one of the things they liked about us, was the fact that we had a compelling answer to the Chinese competitive challenge, which is that we can achieve with our Mexican connection, again, all thanks to my co-founder, with our Mexican connection, we can achieve price parity with the Chinese on production and superiority on innovation because we have short supply chains and an open source web-based innovation model. And that combination of the web plus the sort of San Diego, Tijuana nexus is, we think, an answer to the 21st century manufacturing challenge, which is how do you manufacture cheap and fast and good? Mexico provides, more importantly, the fast and good. Cheap almost comes for, cheap is a nice plus, but it's just the quality of the Mexican engineers, the availability of talent, the manufacturing expertise. We hire people who learn this, the ropes in factories such as Kyocera, Samsung, and others. And
you're welcome.
Yes. And we basically
reduce your training costs.
We basically get 20 years of multinational NAFTA experience for free because these people are just so well. Over these last two decades, these people have been so well trained in sort of world-class manufacturing techniques, and they speak fluent in ISO 9001, and I can't spell ISO 9001, and this all just kind of was an epiphany. It just 2 years ago, I'd never been to Tijuana, and now I'm like, this is the secret sauce. So I'm here as a kind of the marketplace brought me here, and every day I discover I sort of feel better about our choices. I think that our Mexican team is teaching me, I knew a lot about technology. I knew very little about manufacturing. All the important lessons we're learning are coming from my Tijuana team.
Just so everybody here understands, what sort of drones are you building? I mean, you're not building Predators.
We're making small civilian drones. We have about 35,000 of them out there already. They're quite inexpensive. They cost about $500. Just to give you a point of reference, we make more drones every quarter than the entire U.S. military fleet. Our drones don't cost $5 million, which is why they're so popular. But the point is that the future of aerospace is largely unmanned. It's going to be the PC model versus the mainframe model. The aerospace industry has already provided the mainframe model. We're providing the PC model, and off to the races we go.
And these are marketed to individuals, not to.
They carry cameras, not Hellfire missiles. Yes, okay. If that's your question.
Okay. Everybody got that? Okay.
All right.
Just want to make sure. Okay. And why Tijuana instead of Querétaro, somewhere further away? Why, or Tijuana rather than?
Tijuana found me. Again, my team, these guys, they found me online and won me with their enthusiasm and their expertise and their ability to just move quickly. You can probably tell me why is it that a team from Tijuana found me and not a team from one of these other places? I think it probably has something to do with the culture and the sort of proximity to San Diego in Tijuana. These kids, and they're all. They're 25. The average age of the company is 25. I'm more than twice as old as the average employee, which is a little sobering. But there's something about that generation that grew up on the border in the 1990s who just had what it took. They were kind of web natives. They're incredibly global in terms of technology sophistication. They grew up with the internet, the greatest information resource the world has ever seen, and so and they're fearless.
Fearless.
And absolutely fearless. They start factories on credit cards because they don't know that you can't. They just do it, and that's why I'm here. That's why I quit my job, is because this team built a factory without asking permission, without getting investment. They just did it, and that's incredible courage.
That's cool. That's great. Good. Okay, Dave. Your scale, you have to push the. There you go. Okay. Tell us, just give us an overview of Kyocera, Mexico, what you're doing, how many employees, and then again, why are you there? Why aren't you in Kyoto? Why aren't you in China? Why aren't you in San Diego? Why are you there?
Sure. Let me, before I launch off into that, also just as an example, though, echo what Chris has said, and Eduardo, I know, has very, very similar kinds of stories. And talking about the ability to do things quickly, in the Tijuana region. I can't say about Mexico in general, but I can talk about Tijuana. One of our claims to fame and one of our core strengths as a business in the Tijuana region is our ability to ramp very quickly. An example of that, we have many examples. It's just, one program, one project, one product, one business after another. Our typical gen time to get something going is like less than 2 months. When we were given cell phones to assemble, they were sending back the initial cell phones in a month. In a year, they were making 1 million cell phones a month. So it's just really a phenomenal area and very, very quick time to market, and they don't let a lot of things get in the way. So we see that all the time in our projects, in our business. So let me start off, though, with kind of what the ambassador asked me to talk about. My name's Dave Hester, as you've heard. Buenos dias. I'm very happy to be here, and really thankful that I was invited to speak. I will say, though, I'm not sure how many more of these that I can do. The last panel that we were on was in Arizona, and at that time I'd actually herniated a disc in my back, and so I was on painkillers and trying to be able to sit and walk. And now, right before this one, I broke my collarbone. So I'm not sure how many more body parts I have to sacrifice for this.
We can help.
Yeah, there we go. Good, good. Maybe it is a good thing that I'm here. Although one interesting thing that came out of it is, as soon as I broke my collarbone, my back didn't hurt anymore. So
Right out of time.
Right. So just a couple of real quick comments about Kyocera in general. As you heard, Kyocera, most of you know, I think Kyocera is a Japanese corporation, started in 1959, started with very much like 3D robotics, and had probably the same kind of vision that they had. So it was started with about 20 people and actually about $15,000 US at the time, and now it's a $15+ billion corporation with 66,000 employees around the world and 200+ companies around the world. As far as we're concerned, Kyocera Mexicana, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Kyocera International, which is located in San Diego. Kyocera International has about 6 companies around North America, and we actually manufacture products in Tijuana for 4 of, we call them our partner companies. In Tijuana, we make solar panels, which a lot of folks I know in this room are very familiar with. We also make electronic components for cellular base stations. And as a matter of fact, if you combine our Tijuana operation with all of the cell phone components that Kyocera makes in Japan, the probability that an electron from your phone call is going to touch a Kyocera component is virtually 100%. So Kyocera is in the wireless business around the world. In addition to that, we make LCD displays for the medical industry, and we also provide drill resharpening services for the PC board business in all of North America. So, PC board manufacturers in Minnesota and New England and those kinds of places actually send their drills to Tijuana to be resharpened by us, and they can do that a total of about 10 times. We have 1,200 employees, and we've actually been manufacturing in Tijuana for 23 years now. The other thing that is interesting is to look at our business and the history that we have in that we started 23 years ago, and in the beginning of the business, we actually shipped product back and forth across the border as many as 4 times. So it would come from the U.S. to Tijuana, back to the U.S., back and forth 4 times. And that's not unusual. There are other businesses who started at the same kind of time frame that we did, and as they then have developed their infrastructure and the infrastructure of Tijuana has developed, then now we're able to do everything in KMX, and we ship all of our products directly to the customers of our partners. One other fact, we have about 23 acres acres on our plant site. And we have about 361,000 square feet, and we have space to build out another 200,000 square feet, which hopefully one of these days we'll do. Let me give you a little bit about our business experience in Tijuana and also in the U.S. As I said, we're manufacturing for 4 different Kyocera businesses around North America, not just in San Diego. And what we try to do, very much as Chris has explained, is we try to use the advantages of both sides of the border for our business, and we try to do it in a way that makes us globally competitive. And without having the advantages of both sides of the border, I would say in our businesses it would be very difficult to be globally competitive. For us, one of the initial attractions of going to Tijuana was the lower labor costs and the advantages of a maquiladora operation. But after we got there, we discovered that we had a tremendous and capable workforce. We could get the engineering talent and skills that we need, and that there has now developed a very good manufacturing infrastructure in the Tijuana region with, in Tijuana alone, 560-plus maquiladoras, and in the Baja, approximately 1,200 maquiladoras. The other thing that we're now looking at is with the economy of Mexico now growing at roughly 2 times the GDP of the U.S. Mexico itself is now becoming a very, very good market for us. So we like good access to the North American market, and we like good access to the other Latin American markets as well. One of the things that I was asked to talk about was recruiting our direct labor workforce, and as you can imagine, if you have 1,200 folks, you better have the ability to recruit the people you need very smoothly. Turnover for us is in other maquiladoras is about 0.7% a month. Some are less than that. But as I think a lot of people remember, about 5 years ago, for the maquiladora industry as a whole, it used to be about 2.5%, which was an extremely challenging kind of situation. But today, it's something that is very reasonable for us. And what we found is a great majority of our workforce has now relocated to the Tijuana region. So there's no reason for them to come and work and then leave to go back to their families in another area of Mexico. The Mexican work ethic for us is extremely high. And in talking about the engineers that we need, we have been able to recruit them, and the interesting statistic that I know a lot of folks in the room know is that Mexico, in general, per capita, graduates 3 times the number of engineers that we graduate in the U.S. So engineering talent has been there for us. We've also found that the schools, in working on intern programs and other kinds of programs that are industry-specific, have been very cooperative. I'll just make one other comment. The biggest challenge that we have in the area is actually just the border itself. We have challenges getting our people and mostly our products back and forth across the border. We're very fortunate in our business in that our products are reasonably compact, and in general we only have about 5 trucks that go across the border a day. But some of those waits can be 2 and 3 hours. A big day for us, though, and sometimes we're going through where we're shipping 50 trucks a day, and those are very, very challenging kind of trucks for us. Very, very challenging kind of times for us, and we're trying to turn trucks and have them make them more than one trip. The other thing I will say, though, is that there has been tremendous cooperation from the Border Patrol and other agencies to try and help this, and we see this pilot effort that's going on about pre-checking goods in Mexico before they get to the border, and then allowing them to basically go across with just a wave is a very great project, and we hope that that project and more like it can really be embedded in the future. So that's kind of a history. Go ahead.
Let me ask one quick question.
Yep.
Has that wait time in the border over the past, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, gone up, gone down, stayed the same?
I'd say it's right now it's been pretty steady. It's been, I think everyone who goes across the border who has a Century card knows that it's gotten much, much better for people. And the Ready Lane's been a big success, and a lot of things have gone on that way. But from the standpoint of the trucks themselves, it's about the same.
Great. Good. Eduardo, again, thank you for yesterday.
Our pleasure. We'd like to brag about what we have in Tijuana.
Well, it was amazing. I mean, you have a great deal to be proud of, and it was great to see, not just your pride, but the pride of all your colleagues working there.
And I'll talk a little bit about the earlier point, why Tijuana, why. I get the question very often. We get visitors from all over the world to the facility, and they always ask, why Mexico? But most interestingly, I get the question, and now that you talk about Mexico, why Tijuana? Within Mexico, why Tijuana? And I find that question very, very interesting, because it opens up the door to share a lot of information that is not necessarily out there. Well, let me talk about DJO. For a long time, I had believed that we have here in this mega region of San Diego, Tijuana, the prime example worldwide of two countries that collide and work together to generate prosperity and success. I think it's not matched by any other part of the world. And the more I try to validate that point through facts, the more I realize that it's true. But still, we have a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential. I say that because I've been fortunate enough to work for DJO, which is a prime example of a corporate office that is located in the California side, in the U.S. side, working with the manufacturing facility, the main manufacturing facility of the corporation in Tijuana. So there are some other, of course, many medical device companies or some other type of industry in Tijuana, but our particular situation really allowed me to see our two Californias interacting and realizing that point, that we have a treasure right here. We're very fortunate to be part of this mega region. I say that because it was mentioned by Chris about having that potential with in design, in engineering. We have the luxury of having the R&D group, which still resides in corporate office, 45 minutes away from our main manufacturing facility. So that's a key competitive advantage. I have that luxury of having engineers, R&D engineers. As soon as they get an idea that is still a concept, they have the opportunity to go and work shoulder to shoulder with the people that are going to mass produce those products later down the road. And that's something that in my previous experience, in my previous life, working for companies like Baxter Healthcare or Allegiance or Cardinal, that I used to have the corporate office, then the R&D function in Chicago or in East Hills, New York, or I didn't have that. I didn't see that interaction. Right here, we're living it day after day, and we're seeing the results. The cycle time or the lead time from design or concept to market, it's unbelievable. It's, I would say, 15% of my previous experience in any other company that I work for. And the fact that we have that communication ongoing, it's both ways, as it was mentioned by Mr. Shafiro, that the people making the product, the actual, let alone the engineers, the operators, the guys that are putting together the components, are providing valuable, I will say the most valuable feedback to the design engineers, saying, you know what, never use this connector again. It's a hassle, it's a problem. And you have like 3 others that perform the same function, and I don't know why you're getting 4 things that do the same. And they realize, oh, you're right. And we consolidate volumes that become savings and so forth on. But I wanted to paint a picture of a practical example of the benefit or the advantages of having this interaction so close. The other thing, when I always talk about Tijuana, our company, it's $1 billion, roughly $1 billion in sales. When I started with the company 10 years ago, it was a $160 million company. So that just to put it in perspective, that the growth that we have sustained. We've been 18 years in Tijuana as DAO. Started with an operation of 25 employees doing 3 part numbers. And I always like to point out that those 3 part numbers were putting the zipper and the shoulder strap to the duffel bag in which the actual product went. So that was the extent of responsibility, and I say that with a lot of pride. That was the extent of responsibility that we had back then, putting the zipper and the shoulder strap to the gym bag. Today, we manufacture 85% of the global portfolio of offering of any DAO product in the world. In that same facility. And we're no longer 25 employees, we're 2,300 and counting. We are basically one of the leaders, or the leader in rehabilitation products. We're not only doing orthopedic devices that we used to be specifically working on orthopedic devices. Now we're doing pain management, we're doing electrotherapy, we're doing bone growth regeneration through electromagnetic impulses. We're doing all of those products in the same Tijuana facility that used to put zippers. And that's something that amazes a lot of the visitors, the capability that we have to integrate different type of technology. Because that fact alone talks to you about several things. One, you have the access to qualified hand, like top-notch engineers that compete with any engineer in the world, right? They're capable of, if you visit my facility or the DJO facility that I'm fortunate enough to run, you will find in one corner we're doing, and this is literally, in one corner we have a clean room doing surgical product certified by the FDA. Next to it, we're gonna have plastic injection molding. Next to it, we're cutting metal with laser beam. Next to it, we're doing robotic welding. Next to it, we're doing, you start to get the idea. We have like 600 sewing machines there. So I call it the perfect playground for an engineer. Being an engineer by trade, I'm in love with that facility because any technology that you can think of, we're touching it, we're doing something about it, whether it's electronics or injection molding or surgical sterile products, we're making it right there. And some of the most smart visitors, they get past that and say, where do you get the people to be able to run all of these under one roof? You're not going to an expert in molding to get your parts. You're doing it yourself in this facility. And you're not going to the expert in metal processing to do stamping and laser cutting and welding. You're doing it next door, right here. And, where do you get all these people? From Tijuana, from the street. And that's what I use as a lead to talk about why Tijuana, because I have some very specific ideas about Tijuana, and these are not validated by anything, only by my personal experience, but you tell me if it doesn't make sense. What I think about Tijuana is that there is no other place other than Baja California, if you want to expand it more than Tijuana, but Baja California, no other place in Mexico in which you will find Iceland corporate headquarters put in a facility there, a French, a Canadian, Japanese, an American. There is no other example in the whole country where you can find that diversity of nationalities investing their money, foreign investment, like you find in Tijuana. And that leads to another logical thing. When you have that, in my experience, you pick somebody from the street, and that person that you hire today already worked for Mitsubishi, for Kyocera, for Toyota. So by the time that you get that employee, he sees a laser cutting machine and says, yeah, I've seen that. He sees a molding machine. Yeah, I worked that when I work in Kendall. And you get, and I have a lot of time to think about these things, because once you get to that point, okay, this guy has been exposed to any trend, methodology, philosophy, way of thinking in regards to manufacturing that you can think of. And that's a random guy that you pick up from the street. You won't find that in Moroleón. They'll be top-notch in textile. And you go to Guadalajara and they'll be top-notch in automotive. But talk about medical device industry, talk about any other type of industry, and they're specialized. In Tijuana, you have for lack of a better word, a cluster of different diversity of technologies and industries that the people are exposed to. So going back to my point that I have a lot of time to think about these things, I think that move beyond the technical. The fact that that person has been exposed. As a human, they have developed a very useful and very difficult trait that is adaptability. When you get somebody that has that technical experience, but at the same time he couldn't help it but to develop the adaptability trait as a person, You have gold in your hands. And that's how you go from 25 employees to 2,300, and you don't rely necessarily on third-party vendors. You can do it yourself. If we need tubing, okay, let's buy a extruder. You sure? Yeah. How much is it? 400,000. Okay, how much am I going to get if we run the tube opposed to buying it? That. Well, let's do it. You never stop to think, are we capable of extruding our own tubing? Are we capable of molding? We're molding 90% of our components. We're almost self-sufficient in molding. We're self-sufficient in extrusion. We're self-sufficient in metal processing. And that's with Tijuana people, not one single soul from anywhere else. Some of the functions that we have integrated recently, or last few years, to the Tijuana facility move beyond the technical or the labor-intensive side of things. We're doing customer service in the Tijuana facility. We're doing accounts payable right there. We're doing these type of functions. And again, we were growing and growing on the manufacturing side from, let's say, 2000, the year 2000 to 2006, at an incredible rate. We were basically taking over, and that's how we got to the 85% of the global portfolio being manufactured in Tijuana. That saying of don't put all your eggs in one basket, we are defiant of that. And that's what we're doing so far. We have 5,500 employees worldwide, out of which 2,300 work in the Tijuana facility that is in El Florido Industrial Park, there in Tijuana. Yeah. Hit there, I gotta plug that in, because that's another thing. I have plenty of stories. Again, when we built our facility, that is a 225,000 square feet facility, it took us 10 months from zero, from scratch, to have the facility ready. 10 months. And I used to joke with the CEO of the company saying, just getting the construction permits in California, my friend, will take you 10 months. Let alone making the building. And another thing that was very important, and that the CEO used to say, you know what, the most surprising thing is not the 10 months, it's the way we did business in Tijuana. You know that we built that facility on a handshake. We got one day with Georgina is here, and we just walked and talk about the agreement, and let's do it. They started the construction without putting a cent down on our part. We did, of course, later on, but on a handshake. And that's the way that Tijuana is operated. That I put that as an example of the mentality that you never stop to question, are we going to be capable of doing it? And again, that we take it for granted because we live here and we are familiar with the area, but never lose sight that we have something very, very unique here in this mega region, and that we're not making the most of it. I think the best still to come, and we're moving in that direction. I mean, just to close, our facility is, by now, it's not famous because of the accomplishments, technical accomplishments. We have gotten some awards on, like the Chingo Prize and the top 10 Best Plants Award. But our most relevant success recently has been being named the top place to work in the country. The last 3 years, consecutive years, we have been named the best place to work in the country, or the second best place to work in the country. And that talked to you about that we realize at one point that our most important asset is our people. I know that phrase has been used so many times that it means nothing to a lot of people, but we found out that that's the key competitive advantage that you have in this mega region. You have the capability of two Californians working together to generate prosperity and success like no other example in the world.
That's great. As the chair, I'm going to ask one more question. I'll let whoever wants to answer it. But the vision in the United States of Tijuana and of Mexico is that it's unsafe, that the rule of law is shaky, and that if you were to go into business in Mexico, you would have lots of issues with enforcement of contracts, you'd have issues with a whole range of things, and that securing the permissions that you would need, the licenses would require paying more to the U.S. Let me ask you, I mean, what is the experience as people who have invested your money, your company's money, and who have gone through those, who've acquired the licenses, who've built plants? Is that vision correct or just dead wrong?
Well, knock on wood, we haven't had any problems yet. I mean, I would say that, my solution to this is to work with Tijuana natives. I just trust them to guide me, and they know the people, they know the culture, they know the processes, and that sort of deep connection with, from the natives was, from my native team, largely ensured that I didn't have to kind of come up to speed on risks and legal stuff. That we basically knew people who we trusted and could help us.
Yeah. Dave, any?
Yeah, let me try and take each one of your points here. So the first question was the perception of security in the area. So if you go back, 7 or 8 years ago, I think that everyone would agree that it was a time in Tijuana when you had to be cautious. But today, I know for the last, say, 3 to 5 years, from the standpoint of businesses and maquiladoras, we haven't had any issues. That doesn't mean that, we don't still do a few things to make sure that we're not being irresponsible, but we don't have any issue from that standpoint. As it relates to the rule of law and contracts enforcement, and I've been in this job for 2 years, and I can look back reasonably another 2 years, and I've got to tell you that first of all, we haven't had any kind of issues like that at all. Secondly, I would say that as I looked at the contracts that existed whenever I got there, they were insufficient in U.S. terms as it relates to as being U.S.-esque. You want to eliminate all of the liability that you can, and the contracts that we had didn't even come close to doing that, but we still had no issue. So now we have better contracts, and again, we don't have any issues. As it relates to licenses and permits and those kinds of things, I've got to tell you, there is just, from what I have seen, tremendous cooperation. There is really nothing that has stood in our way of doing something from a license or a permit. And the other thing I would say is doing it right. All of the maquiladores that I have seen, all the businesses that I have seen in Mexico are very law-abiding. They try to do everything from the standpoint of the right kind of legal requirements, the right kind of environmental requirements. They try and do it responsibly. And we've just, in general, got tremendous help in being able to do that.
Very quickly, just to mention, again, the fact that we have the corporate office in California and in Mexico almost forces the people from corporate office to recurrently visit our facility, being the main facility of almost the whole company. So I always had at my disposal the testimonials of the people that cross every single day or day in, day out to visit our facility to do their job and go back. So whenever I had a requirement from the state or to have some information out there about to fight the perception of safety or safety issues, I use that. And very simple, to ask the question to the Americans or to the U.S. people that work in the facility, in the Tijuana facility, have you ever been the victim of a violent act? The answer, thank God, for all of them is no. And my second question in front of the camera was, have you ever personally witnessed a shooting or act of violence? And at least, and I don't know if I'm a lucky guy or this is statistically representative, the answer to the second risky question was no. I would ask Chris, have you been in a shooting or have you seen?
No, I have not been in a shooting.
Okay, then the statistic is valid. No, I used to use testimonials. But no denial, again, to the point that Dave was doing, yes, definitely. 2008, I have as the peak of the perception of safety with and rightly so, with issues. But I would say that something's happening in the few last years. Everybody's turning their head to Tijuana and questioning, is it still unsafe? Because they're noticing that we're now talking about many things. I had the USA Today go to the facility for an interview about safety perception of Tijuana last week, and I realized at a certain point of the interview, I told the guy, you know what, I'm telling you all that Tijuana is not. I'm telling you, you won't get an act of violence, you won't get kidnapped, you won't get, and I'm listening to myself, and let me tell you about what Tijuana truly is, because it's enough with talking about what Tijuana is not. And that opened up the door to share with him a lot of success stories like what Dave, Chris, and myself have presented here, and many other things. And at the end of the day, the note that ended up being published mentioned that. You know what? I think we have to move beyond that. We're at a point in which we can talk about all the good things that Tijuana has, from the gastronomic, incredible trip that you can have right there, to the tourism, to the industry that, again, second to none. Several things that are there, state-of-the-art facilities that you wouldn't believe, because Hollywood doesn't do us any favors, and every time that you get an image of Tijuana, is typically a dusty little town in the middle of nowhere. So I invite everybody to walk across the Kyocera facility doing solar panels with engineers that are Tijuana natives, and to counteract a little bit of that. Still, we get the warnings issue here and there, and that doesn't help. But again, little by little, we are getting the opportunity to talk about what Tijuana is, and not about what Tijuana is no longer or is not.
I want to try something possibly risky here. Does anyone know whether anybody was killed in Tijuana yesterday? Yes. How many people were killed? 3. 3 people were killed in Tijuana yesterday. Okay. Yeah, that presumably was a big day. I mean, there's a lot. That was on more than usual?
Lately, no.
That's okay.
We didn't have a reporter that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the last month, we have a little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
But I agree, the statistics have shown concrete results of the diminishing of this.
So it was 3 yesterday. I mean, the reason I asked is because I was just checking the news from Berkeley, California, where I live, and you probably think of Berkeley as being, University of California, it's Silicon Valley. It's idyllic. Berkeley has a population of about 600,000, maybe. So it's a fifth the size of Tijuana. 2 people were killed in Berkeley yesterday. So on a per capita basis, I was a lot safer yesterday in Tijuana than I was in my hometown of Berkeley.
Fine. Okay, good. Listen, let's get 3 questions and get the answers, then we'll do 3 questions. I like the way Eric did it, so, yes, sir. And your name, please.
I'm John McNeese. The question is for Dave, but it bears on something that Chris said. In the area of solar modules, there's been intense competition, obviously, from China, and the prices have been driven. The prices have been driven very low, and obviously there's a price-quality trade-off. You can have very low prices and with very lousy quality, but how do you compare in pricing with the Chinese? So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, an awful lot of solar panels are bought with federal money one way or another, and you've got the Buy America requirements, but there is a trade agreement exception. So are you able to sell into Buy America kinds of contracts? So the 2 questions, competitiveness with China, and considering the pricing advantage and the cost advantage of Mexico, are you still able to meet Buy America requirements?
Yeah,
do 3 first.
Yes, Steve. Your name, please.
Steve Williams from Century Partners. This is for Chris. Could you explain your analogy, your experience with China 20 years ago to this group?
Good. Yes, sir.
Carlos de la Parra, el Colegio de la Frontera Norte. This question is for all three, and I'm going to put you on the spot for something, and I have an excuse for that. I'm an academic, so I can do that. I'm wondering what would your response be in terms of greater engagement within the community? You've talked about this paradise that is blooming, and yet there's still a perception, as you can see in the room and outside the room, that the balance is precarious. It could falter. It wasn't too long ago that it wasn't great. Now we're hoping that it stays that way. So if somebody came up to you and said, how would your company engage in a greater partnership with the community to make it more stable socially and secure, and something like what you would give back to the community so that you become more of a partner? Thank you.
That's great. Okay, so let's start first. Dave, solar panels is clearly aimed at you, so what's...
Okay. So for John and his questions about solar modules, which John is very good, and hopefully I can answer enough of this for you. And I could go on for an hour about this, but I'm not going to go quite that long. In talking about price quality, certainly there is, we feel, a trade-off in the marketplace. Kyocera, for those who don't know this, has been making solar modules for 37 years. So when Kyocera tells you that our warranty is 20-plus years, we've got panels that have been working for 20-plus years. We're not a 2-year-old new kid on the block who's giving you a 25-year warranty. And so we can tell you what are going to happen to these panels over 25 or 30 years. And we do believe that there's a price-quality kind of trade-off. Also, you combine that with the fact that many, if not most, of the companies who are continuing to drive the price down and who are not perceived to be, in our opinion, in the same quality range because they don't have the same certifications, they don't have the same qualifications for their installers and so forth. They continue to be gigantically in the red. So, how long you can keep that up, it's beyond me. I don't know. I guess it depends on a lot of things other than normal business conditions.
Are you suggesting subsidies?
I'm not suggesting anything. So, how can we compare with the Chinese? I've given you a good quality comparison. Our pricing, and please don't quote me on this, but our pricing is at a premium. Probably varies in from the 7 to 17% kind of range. And we've found that for the people who know solar panels and who know quality and so forth, that's been acceptable. I give you, for instance, with pricing where it is today, we're not making a lot of money on solar panels, but our plant's running at capacity. Not only that, but we're increasing our capacity. So we're continuing to really try to maintain what we think is our fair share of the market. And it is very hard for us to compete with in the U.S. market. The issue becomes, people who are making buying decisions and purchasing decisions of these kinds of things, first of all, are not rewarded on whether the purchasing decision that they made gave them panels that lasted for 25 years, because they're not going to be there 25 years from now. So a lot of times it's just based on price. And if it's just based on price, we're not going to win. So if it's based on value, we are going to win. So we think we have a value sale.
That's great.
Yep.
Chris, can you talk for a minute about the China 20 years ago, Hong Kong, China versus San Diego, Tijuana today?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there are some interesting analogies. I wasn't in China 20 years ago, but I was there, 15 years ago. So I was there from 97 through 2000, and just after from the handover of Hong Kong through WTO. I would say that it was a mind-blowing experience. I mean, watching 21st century China emerge was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I have incredible respect and affection, actually, for what's going on there. Anybody who thinks that China's just copying isn't paying attention. They've got world-class engineers, incredibly good, the best production in the world, and they're getting incredibly good at other things like design and marketing and even branding. So I take them super seriously. I would say that today, as I mentioned before, we are scaled to compete. We feel that level of production efficiency can be accomplished with automation, and that fundamentally I see a reversal of 1,000 years of globalization. The first millennia of globalization was driven by labor arbitrage, the migration towards cheaper labor. As automation replaces the sort of more manual aspects of labor across the world, we all buy robots for the same price. And this means that that labor no longer determines where things are made, but instead time. And what Tijuana offers us is a cost competitiveness on the sort of actual physical manufacturing and a massive time advantage over China. I still think we're going to have to outcompete them on engineering and marketing. I take them super seriously, but I do think we've leveled the playing field now for production. Did you want me to also take the third question, or do you want to move on for that?
Well, go ahead and answer that, and then I'm going to ask Eduardo to answer it as well.
I have a real cool...
This is what are you giving back?
The giving back. So I'm, I wanted to answer that simply because I actually I do have one big priority that I want to highlight. I don't even speak Spanish. I don't really have any particular thing to give back to Mexico socially. Personally, I think my team members do, but I don't personally. But what I would like to do is to give back something to the innovation entrepreneur startup community in Tijuana. Maybe another little quick show of hands. I'm not aware of another high-tech startup in Tijuana. Another high-tech company startup that's focusing on global. Is there another one?
There's a software one.
A software one. What's it called?
Nexus.
Okay, good. So now there's one. Okay, now I now have one. I think I would like to to help my team provide role models for other young engineers, for people of their generation, to not just go to work for multinationals. As great as that may be, I would like them to start their own companies and just do it. And so if we can serve as some sort of inspiration or catalyst for that, then that would be my answer to that question.
It's a great answer. Okay, Eduardo, we visited yesterday DJO and saw all sorts of things that you're doing. So if you could answer Carlos de la Parra's question, how are you engaged with the Tijuana community?
Well, I mentioned it before that just incidentally that we have been named the best place to work in the country by the Great Place to Work Institute for the last 3 years, first or second place, and that's I don't know if you're familiar with the nature of that benchmark exercise, but it basically doesn't discriminate by the nature of your business. You're competing against Starbucks, Walmart, all the banks in the country, and for manufacturing facility of medical devices in the middle of Tijuana to be named for the last 3 years the best place in the country to work is because of that. It's not because our technical awards or our lean manufacturing proficiency that we have been recognized for that. And that's the point that I made at the end. Now we're turned completely on the community and from our front, that is the industrial side. Our facility in Tijuana, yesterday, some of you were able to see it. We're doing some practices that go beyond creative and they become a little bit weird, I said yesterday. When the 2008 economic crisis started, that we are still getting out of, I decided to take it upon as a challenge when I got the call from a corporate office to say, you know what, Eduardo, this year there won't be any merit increases. And with 2,300 souls depending on you, and if you think about it, 2,300 families, you tend to start becoming a community-oriented person and try to figure out how to give back and how to help. The way we started all of this is by posing the question, how can I help? If I cannot give you more money, and again, bear with me, we're talking about a microcosmos here. If all the facilities emulate this, we'll get to something. If I cannot give you more money, how can I do things so the money that I'm already giving you last longer? Very basic question, very basic principle. I say, well, I start by asking my staff, what does an employee do on their spare time when they're outside of this facility? Well, they go to the grocery shopping, they go to pay their bills. Say, okay, let's do something. Let's start bringing, and this is the creative, weird part of things. Every Thursday, we're going to put the supermarket here in the parking lot of the facility, and they're going to have access voluntarily to get their groceries over there, because just put it in perspective, for the vast majority of people that work in a maquiladora in Tijuana, doing their grocery shopping on the weekend means taking a bus to get to the grocery shop, getting the goods, and then loaded with all these goods, pay another second bus to get back to their houses. If I, as a facility, can provide them the access to that supermarket on their workplace without having to spend the time or the money to do that, and when you have an idea like that, it tends to be like a snowball. Some things started to happen that I didn't anticipate. Then when you have 2,300 people in that particular facility, the vendors were fighting to be the ones to sell you. You can get from 1 pound of virgins to a DVD player these days, right there, every Thursday. And the people, that really connected and resonated with the people, because they saw the value. After a lot of iterations of this, of getting people saying, how much are you paying for your oranges? That much. I can do better. Okay, you're on next Thursday. You iterate that several times, and true story, I was having lunch in a restaurant around the facility, and the waiter said, excuse me, Mr. Salcedo, could you give me kind of a pass or something to go and buy on the supermarket on a Thursday? Because we all hear that they get the best deal that they can get in town. And that's a very simplistic idea of how can I make your money last more? And that drove us to get crazy about it and start challenging our boundaries and say, what else? Well, paying the bills. These guys, again, most of them, they have to take 1 or 2 buses, because in Mexico, you don't pay your electrical bill or your water bill through a direct deposit to your Bank of America account. No, you do it the good old-fashioned way. You go and get in line on an ATM type of machine or in the electrical company office, and you do line until you get your turn. Then you turn around, take another bus to go and pay your water, or you go to a supermarket to do it. We as a facility, for zero money, at the touch of an enter, we can pay 2,000 pay stubs of electrical bills at the touch of a button with no cost. We already have agreements with the payroll, with the banks, and everything. So let's tell the employees, any utility bill, whether it's cable, water, whatever, you come and drop it here in the Human Resources area, and we'll take care of it. Of course, it's their money, but the fact of having to go and pay, and all of that started to create this type of ideas. Just to share a very quickly last one, I ended up going to the extreme of calling the corporate office and say, you know what, I want to compress the work week from 5 days to 4. If I can guarantee you that I have the agreement of the employees, why you want to do that? Because if I free up 1 day of the week and we start working Tuesday through Friday opposed to Monday through Friday, if they have any type of expense to have somebody wash out their kids, to take additional transportation to get to the workplace, whatever, I can cut that 20% immediately. But no, my main idea is not that. My main idea is I'm going to free them up for 1 day, because I realize that if I have 2,300 employees in that manufacturing facility, do you think that within those 2,300 employees, is there going to be a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician? Of course, it's a rhetorical question. Yes. And like when I realized that it's a 2-layer, you have 2,300 employees, but they represent 2,300 families. I said, do you think that within the period of a year, any of those 2,300 families will need a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician? Another rhetorical question. What if I make my facility the place in which the needy family A meets the service offering B, and they shake their hands? I'm getting you a job additional to the one you have here to supplement your income, and I'm giving you a free day to exercise that trade that you have. So thinking in those creative or sometimes weird type of way, because I assume that I consolidate the whole thing in a philosophy. I said, you know what, from now on we're going to assume that whatever you do for an employee from the gate in earn you zero gratitude. You have to assume that the best sewing machine, German, programmable, the best mercurial lining, the best anti-fatigue net doesn't mean peanuts. You have to assume that whatever you do for an employee from the gate in is a given. They doesn't earn you any gratitude. What can we do from the gate out? And that's what's going to make the difference. And that sets the example at community level, because now some other companies are taking the same approach and trying to replicate some of these practices. And if the more they do, the more that we make a difference that goes beyond DAO or beyond Kyocera and starts. And very quickly, because again, I cannot help it, very quickly, but there's a social phenomena, and this is another one of my Salcedo theories. It's not validated anywhere, but you tell me if it doesn't make sense. Again, I truly believe that there's a social phenomena happening in Tijuana right now that is very easy to overlook. We had people up until one generation ago, maybe this generation, that finally you ask the person, are you from Tijuana? Yeah. Are your parents from Tijuana? Yeah. That never happened 5-10 years ago. You used to ask, no, I'm from Sinaloa. No, I'm from Guadalajara. No, I'm from Michoacan. Tijuana was a concentrated population of people that didn't have any roots, major roots in the city. But this generation, or maybe the last one, is the first one in which you get people that are proud and that feel connected to this region. And by now, you cannot be proud of Tijuana if you're not benefiting and being proud of the region itself, of San Diego, Tijuana. So we have to take advantage of that. That's something easy to overlook that is happening. People that are proud of the place that they're in will give you their 100%. Maybe 10 years ago, you didn't have that raw material to work with.